Hi, Jen here. I finally came up with what I'm calling this series. I'm calling this Read It or Unhaul It, and I'm starting with my juvenile fiction. I had a video previously talking about this, what I was going to do about this, but it wasn't very focused. Now I know what I'm doing. So the deal is this. I'm starting with my juvenile fiction, shelf 1. These are in alphabetical order by author. What I'm going to do is I'm going to either read it or I'm going to unhaul it because it's time, and also because I'm out of room, and I'm out of room for more bookshelves unless I do something drastic, and I don't want to get rid of my dresser or do anything else particularly drastic. So I need to cut down on the number of books, and I keep buying books, so I need to kind of figure out a better way to move them along quicker, read them, and get them out. And then just retain absolute favorites. So that's the plan. Now, the way this is going to work is I'm going to pick something, I'm going to read it if I haven't read it before, and then if I DNF it or finish it but decide to unhaul it, I am going to allow my daughter the opportunity to save a few, because obviously these are children's books. I've bought them for me and for her. And so if she does want to retain one, I'm going to let her. So that's kind of how that's going to work. This shelf here is the shelf in question. There are a lot of books piled on it right now because unfortunately I did buy some additional books, and so I do have to unhaul some to make the ones sitting on top fit. So that's going to be sort of the plan. So I'm going to go ahead and change the camera angle, get you in here close, then we're going to go ahead and talk about how far I've gone so far, because I'm about 8 days into this challenge. So, all right, the books sticking out further are the ones that I still needed to read as of my last video. Poppy is still outstanding. It is book 2 in the series. Book 1 is Ragweed, and that is on hold for me at the library, but it has not come in quite yet. The next one I had to read was Animal Arc, Kitten and the Candy Corn, and I did read that. I did not read Mouse Magic. I am not going to continue with the Animal Arc series. That is definitely exclusively for kids. It's not something that I think most adults would enjoy reading more than a couple of. They are cute, and they're well written enough, and they're excellent for a kid who wants to be a veterinarian when they grow up. But they don't have enough variety from one book to another. It feels very repetitive and formulaic. So for an adult, it's not going to be super awesome. My kid still thinks she wants to save these. There's another one of them that's out in the living room with a bookmark in it. And I told her if she finishes it in the next couple weeks, she can go ahead and save the series. As far as I'm concerned, though, they are an on-haul. The next one that I had to read was Ivy and Bean. I did not have high hopes for this one. I wasn't going to read it because it was number 4 in the series, but we went ahead, I looked them up, and it turns out you don't really need to read them sequentially, so we went ahead and just read book 4. And actually, it was really cute. I was really surprised. I liked it a lot more than I thought I would, and my daughter enjoyed them quite a bit, so for now, Ivy and Bean book 4 is staying. I might actually even add more Ivy and Bean to the current collection. Now, Wizard of Oz. This has 3 books in it. Marvelous Land of Oz, Ozma of Oz. So I picked this one up and started reading Marvelous Land of Oz, and then I looked through it and realized that I read that last year. I did not read Ozma, so I went ahead and read Ozma. I actually, I liked Ozma, and it was kind of neat that those 2 stories, Marvelous Land of Oz and Ozma of Oz, were basically the source material for that really strange 80s movie, Return to Oz. So I actually enjoyed reading it. It's kind of funny, they kind of squashed up the timeline to make that work, to make that movie anyhow. And it wasn't bad. I'll be saving this one. I liked it. I actually might get the rest of the collection. We'll see. The next ones I had to read, I had Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing. So I read that and really liked it. I love Peter and Fudge. I come from a large family. I have younger siblings. And the scene at the end of the book absolutely traumatized me as a child. I didn't even remember it until I got to that scene, and then it was like, haha, I do know this book. Yeah, so, I definitely recommend it. It's really funny. So then I read Otherwise Known as Sheila the Great. I did not really like Sheila, all that much. Unfortunately, she kind of reminds me of me as a kid, and I was not a very likable kid. So, yeah, Sheila kind of made me cringe a little bit. But, since it's book 2 in the Fudge series, and I loved book 1, book 2 will get to stay as well. Now, here's where I ran into a problem. I own book 4 and book 5, but I did not own book 3. So I paused there, and I checked out book 3 from the library, Super Fudge. I am 65% of the way through it. So as soon as I finish that, I will move on to Fudgemania and Double Fudge. The next ones I had to read were the books by Enid Blyton. The first Enid Blyton book I read was The Secret Seven Adventure. This is book 2 in the series. I initially liked it, but there were a couple things that kind of bothered me a little bit, and it was just that part of the book was changed to say Indians or Native Americans, but then part of the book had left it at Red Indians, which was kind of weird and a little bit uneven. So it was okay, you know, it wasn't like a super great children's book. So overall, I just wasn't impressed. I don't know that it's worth keeping. The next one I read was The Famous Five. It is book 4, Five Go to Smuggler's Top, also by Enid Blyton. I love this cover. I love vintage illustrations. Overall, this was a pretty good mystery book. The only thing that was weird, and unfortunately it goes throughout the book, is they have a friend who is darker complected, and so his nickname is Sooty. Now that's awkward and cringy. And it was pretty formulaic. It was just sort of like if you mashed up Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys together. So it wasn't super spectacular. So I don't see a reason to go ahead and retain the book, because it does have kind of that weird thing going on with it. And so I might as well just stick with Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys. The next one I read was the Amelia Jane collection with 3 storybooks in one. Now, I did not read all the books. I read the first one, which is Naughty Amelia Jane. This book also contains Amelia Jane again, and Amelia Jane is naughty again. So basically, Amelia Jane, if you took Ramona and Junie B. Jones and took away all their redeeming qualities and just made them intentionally mean, you would have Amelia Jane. Though Amelia Jane is a toy, she's a doll, so she's not a human, you know? And it's kind of neat because the toys do kind of go silent when people are around, and then they're active when people aren't around, you know, very Toy Story-esque. But unfortunately, it just wasn't, it wasn't something that I really enjoyed, and I don't think my daughter would enjoy it. It would be good, maybe, for someone who was, like, a really big Horrid Henry fan, because I just do not enjoy Horrid Henry at all, because he's just so mean on purpose consistently through the series. And that's kind of, Amelia Jane is sort of a female, doll version of Horrid Henry, essentially. The other thing about this is that, if you look into Enid Blyton, I kind of noticed while I was reading this that there were sort of some gaps in the storyline, and I was wondering why, so I did some searching, because then I found out it was changed from the original, and then I realized that originally there was a character in there called a Gollywog that unfortunately looks like a doll in blackface, which is kind of cringy. They've replaced it in this edition with a toy soldier. So yeah, I don't know, and then when you look into Enid Blyton online, even her daughter says that she was something of a bigot. And I like to generally keep the work and the author separate, you know, because if you read too much into any of the old authors, you're not going to want to read any of their books, right? I mean, unfortunately, most of them have kind of problematic opinions here and there, so it's kind of difficult. However, since Enid Blyton's opinions trickle down into her work, and their works for kids, I don't see too much reason to continue with Enid Blyton. So likely I'll be unhauling all 3 Enid Blyton books. Now, I do still want to try her Wishing Chair series, because that's the one that had more critical acclaim. So hopefully that won't be too cringy, and maybe that'll actually be good, I hope. So yeah, I think that these 3 Enid Blyton books are going to be unhauled. Before I get too far down the line, I have Secrets According to Humphrey. This was also one to be read. My daughter decided she wanted me to read this aloud to her, so we've been reading this aloud. We're on about page 50. I will say that I'm not a huge fan of this particular one. My daughter does like it, so we'll continue reading it, and I'll still go ahead and probably pick up book 1 or book 2, something like that. Because when I was looking at the reviews online, it looks like this one isn't a big favorite with people who do like Humphrey. So this might just be kind of a weaker book in the series. So I don't know if I'll get away with unhauling it, because I think, unfortunately, my kid really likes it, so I think this one will be staying anyways. The next ones on my list were these 2 Choose Your Own Adventure books. We did go ahead and go through a couple scenarios. We died. We died a lot. So I'm going to consider these read, even though we haven't technically beaten the book, I guess, so to say. And so I'm going to go ahead and keep these for now. These 2 aren't the most fun Choose Your Own Adventure titles anyways, but if I come across more fun ones, maybe I'll go ahead and swap these out for them. The next one I had was Last Kids on Earth by Max Brailer. I did read this one. Kid read this one. I can see why kids really like it. It's fun, it's illustrated, it's funny, it's a good adventure, so that was all good. As far as I was concerned, it wasn't really something that I super enjoyed, but my daughter loved it, so this one's staying. I also have book 3 in the series, which I have not read yet, because now it turns out we do need book 2. I'm not sure how I managed to buy book 1 and book 3 and miss buying book 2, but I did it. So yes, I have to order book 2 now, and then we'll go ahead and read book 3. So I don't know if I'll have it in the budget to buy book 2 before the end of the month or not, but if that's the case, then book 3 will turn into part of my December TBR. So we'll see. The next one I had to read was How Lunchbox Jones Saved Me from Robots, Traitors, and Missy the Cruel. This was actually pretty good. It wasn't really what I thought it would be, which was probably a good thing, because I kind of thought it would be sort of dull. It didn't really look like my sort of book, and probably for the first, I don't know, maybe 50 pages, it definitely wasn't my sort of book. But then it gets better. It gets more about relationships and family and interactions with friends and other things that kind of make it more endearing. So I did like this one. So for now it's going to stay, because I'm hopeful that my daughter will read it at some point. I don't particularly need to reread it. It was good, but it wasn't like, woohoo, I'm going to pick this up again one day and read it just for the sake of rereading it. So for now, it gets to stay because I hope my kid will read it. I still have to read Because of Mr. Turrupt. I have not gotten to that one yet. The next one I read was Erie Elementary, The School is Alive by Jack Chabert, which is just a pen name for Max Brailer, the same guy who writes Last Kids on Earth. And actually, you can tell that once you know that. It's got the same sort of writing style to it. So I do think that this is a good book for children who are having difficulty moving from easy readers to chapter books. The vocabulary is easy enough. It doesn't get too much into world building or character development or anything like that, because it's definitely written for that younger set. It's part of the Branches series, and I do like the Branches books. They're a very good bridge between those easy readers and the chapter books. All that being said, is this book fun for adults to read? Not really, unfortunately. Adults, at least I, want more world building, more character development, and all of that. This book serves a very important purpose for early readers, but after that, unless you really love the series as a kid, I don't think you'd want to read it again as an adult. So this one is going to get unhauled. My daughter wanted this one because she wanted a scary book, but then it wasn't scary enough for her. So this is going to just get unhauled at this point, and we'll let some other kid enjoy this. The next book I had to read was The Witch's Buttons by Ruth Chu. This book, if you look at the reviews on Goodreads, there are a lot of reviews that say that this was the book that got someone into reading, which is pretty cool. And I can see that because I read the book and it's a very good balance of not too much world building, not too much character development, just enough to move the story along because it's a very short, sort of early fiction book. But it's still an interesting story. It still manages to be an interesting story. They find this button, and it has a man's face on it, and then they realize that it's a magical button, and a witch tries to take it back, and the story goes from there. So it was actually pretty fun. I liked it. I'm going to save it in case I'm hoping my child will read it, and I will definitely be picking up more books from Ruth Chu because it was actually pretty fun to read. The next one I had was Beverly Cleary's Mitch and Amy. I hadn't really heard much about this one. You mostly hear about Ramona, or Henry, or Runaway Ralph. That's pretty much who you hear about when you talk about Beverly Cleary books. So I didn't know much about this book going into it. Overall, I enjoyed it. It is a little bit old-fashioned, but what I do like is the mom gets sort of more of a speaking role in this, and she's doing more than just housework. So that was kind of cool. But the character I liked most in this book was Bernadette. If you, read this book, Bernadette's just a really kind of self-sufficient little girl who just has no problem being who she is. I really liked her quite a bit. And I like, towards the end of the book, you find out why Bernadette is the way that she is. And that was kind of a neat surprise. So I definitely recommend Mitch and Amy. Now, this book will be getting unhauled, because unfortunately it's very old and the pages were falling out of it while I was reading it. So this one will be getting unhauled. Alright, I did not read Strider by Beverly Cleary, and I did not read Ellen Tibbetts yet. I did read Beezus and Ramona. This was very adorable. There is a reason that this book has remained popular for so long. It's an excellent exploration of sibling relationships and dealing with younger siblings, and it's just really cute. Ramona is a little bit of a pest, but she's more of an accidental one. She's not quite as, I know a lot of parents don't like Junie B. Jones, so if there's a parent who doesn't like Junie B. Jones, probably Ramona would be a good choice, because she's still funny, but she's not quite as as brazen, perhaps, as Junie B. Jones. So I really, really liked Beezus and Ramona. I wish I would have read this as a kid. I probably would have really liked it. This is the last book I've read so far on this shelf. Ramona the Pest by Beverly Cleary. Again, just absolutely stinking adorable. Ramona starts kindergarten, and that opens up her world to a whole bunch of different opportunities to make crazy mischief. And it was just really, really cute. So, from here on, from Ramona the Pest onward, I have not read these yet, other than Dear Mr. Henshaw at the end of the shelf, that I reviewed in a previous video. So I still have Ramona the Brave, Ramona and Her Father, Ramona and Her Mother, Henry Huggins, Henry and Beezus, Henry and Ribsy, Runaway Ralph, and Ralph S. Mouse to read to finish off the rest of this shelf. So just doing a quick count up. So far, I have 16 and a half books left to read on this shelf. And then in addition to that, I have one where I need to go ahead and read the first one. That's Poppy, so I need to read Ragweed first. Before I move on to my next Fudge book, I need to finish reading Super Fudge, which I'm doing. And before I read book 3 of Last Kids on Earth, I need to go ahead and read book 2. So 19 books total, including books I need to read before. So 19 more books to finish this shelf. And I've already read 24 books since I started this project a couple weeks ago. So I'm feeling really good about that. I still have quite a while till the end of November, so I should be able to finish this shelf pretty easily by the end of November. So far, it looks like I will be unhauling 8 books, and that's 4 Animal Arc books, 3 Enid Blyton books, and that one Mitch and Amy book because it's falling apart. That's what I'm looking at so far. We'll see how the rest of the shelf goes. Unfortunately, I buy really good books. So hopefully I'll have a couple more unhauls that will let these other books on top fit back into the shelf. And just to clarify, these ones are already read or almost read. So these do not count because they're already pretty much dealt with. So that's how that project is going so far. I can't wait to get to shelf 2. I really hope the shelf 2 has a lot more books already read on it. Or I hope shelf 2 has a lot of things I end up not liking so that I have more room on my shelf. So we'll see.